Folks, you are here to listen about some stories and successes from the food service industry. So if you're interested in any of the other industries, please find your rooms. But
Stay.
But please stay. I will absolutely put a bid in for this one. My name is Samantha Kenny. I work on the World Wildlife Fund Food Waste team. I have had the pleasure of working with many of you and then meeting many of you this week, and hopefully you also had a chance to meet several of my colleagues and just the great cohort that we have here. I lead our work engaging hospitality and food service businesses to address food waste in their operations and in their supply chains. And we have a lot of really exciting initiatives that I think it's been really inspirational to hear the journey that ReFed and this topic has come over the past several years. And truly in the food service and hospitality sector, this is no longer a topic of early adoption. This is something that's becoming a scaled topic and one with really significant impacts and intersections into communities and other aspects of operations. So I'm really excited and privileged to have this fantastic panel, and I'm going to make a really smooth transition to my seat. This is still working. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start by passing the mic and just hearing from each of our panelists their background a little bit and how their work touches on food waste. So I'm going to start here with Jenny Roberts, the Director of Sourcing and Sustainability at Cava Mediterranean Grill.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here with you. I've been at Cava for 2 years. I sit in the supply chain and finance team, and I lead both sourcing, so all of our food buying, as well as our ESG strategy. It's a very interesting intersection, a very busy role, but one in which I get to be not just the convincer of stakeholders, but the decision maker in many cases.
Awesome, I'm jealous of that opportunity you have. So I'm Aurora, and I founded a company called Astrapto, which means to illuminate, and my mission is shedding light on social and environmental issues in hospitality, travel, and events. So I'm very sector focused, not just food waste focused. I do a lot of sustainability work across the board, so I get to see how food waste does intersect with all of these other sustainability issues. As it relates to food waste, I do if any of you were sitting in the employee engagement session, I love the way Jude from Sodexo said it, because this is what I'm always saying. What I really do is change management. I happen to be teaching about food waste, but what I'm really doing is change management. So we'll hear a little bit more about that in a bit.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie Kraft. I'm the Waste Programs Manager with Bon Appetit Management Company. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are an on-site restaurant company that manages the food in corporations, universities, and specialty locations like museums. As a company, we have a dream to be the premier on-site restaurant company known for its culinary excellence and commitment to socially responsible practices. So as part of that, we have a number of programs that cover everything from local purchasing to farm workers' rights and the food and climate change connection, which is really where I come into the picture with my work on food waste and packaging waste as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Fulmer. I lead sustainability at Oakview Group. OVG is the world's largest owner-operator of sports and entertainment venues globally. So we own and operate buildings like Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle, UBS Arena in New York, and several others. We also manage about 300 other buildings on behalf of other owners, cities, convention centers, theaters, and music facilities. And we also have a hospitality business that provides food and beverage service to those buildings as well as to other facilities that we don't manage. So it's pretty hard to look across our business without seeing where food waste shows up, especially in some of the premium spaces, which is where a big bulk of our businesses, especially in our larger venues. But we also are rolling out a program called Goal, which really helps. You said what your real job is. My real job is just making sustainability easy. So it's really just about helping owners and operators integrate sustainability wherever possible. Food waste is one of the number one things that people ask about, of course, because it's so visible and because we know that there are solutions that exist that we could do something about.
That's really great. Thank you each for your introduction. And I encourage anyone, if you'd like to switch your chair or move up and sit somewhere, please make yourself comfortable. We're excited to chat about this. You won't knock us off our game. We are going to start at a really critical component of food waste initiatives in these types of operations, and that's measurement. And don't turn off your ears. Measurement is the most critical aspect of justifying any action on food waste. It's the only way to create an initiative that has sticking power. So would you please each share with us a little about how you've quantified waste so far and used that data to gain momentum in your food waste reduction efforts? And I'd love to start with Kristen.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say, sports, which is, of course, a large tenet of a lot of our buildings, is inherently competitive. So everybody wants to know their waste diversion number. They want to do better than their competitor. And luckily, we have some leaders in this industry that have helped kind of drive that competition forward. So I would say, first, just knowing, I would say most operators kind of just know their waste diversion rate at this point. Of course, in sports and entertainment facilities, that's mostly single-use plastic and aluminum, so that come from beverages. But I think actually, really, now that we're getting pretty good at recycling, a bulk of it is actually food waste. So we look at reports on a monthly basis and have an online tracking tool to help with that through the Goal platform. That helps people capture and quantify all of the different streams of waste within their facility, and also capture the Scope 3 emissions related to hauling it. So it's pretty easy for them to identify, well, if a bulk of what we're paying to send to the landfill is actually food waste, then chances are, or organics, then chances are we could better divert that to composting. And I think it helps people understand the true value that they could have in either reducing food waste from the start or finding donation programs or otherwise. Unfortunately, in our industry, more venues say they do that than who actually do it right now. So it's really, again, about making it easy for people.
So as a food service company, we also obviously have quite a bit of food waste. So at Bon Appetit, I mentioned our commitment to socially responsible practices. We have a number of commitments around waste that all of our locations adhere to. Source reduction 1 or more ways, an active food recovery program, and diversion from landfill in 1 or more ways. In terms of actual measurement, we have an internal proprietary waste tracking program that our teams are using to capture the cause, quantity, and destination of waste, primarily in the back of the house in the kitchens, though they can use it to track post-consumer waste as well if they like. And with that, we've seen a reduction in waste, which has been great, but it's also opened up some other areas of opportunity for us. I think in food service, it makes a lot of sense and it's easy to focus on the kitchen, but a large portion of our operations is also catering. So it's easy to say that catering, that's happening in another room, that's in another building, maybe it's off-site, and kind of discount it. But we see through our tracking how much is left over at the end of a catering event. We know how common over-ordering is with catering. And so we're really looking to actually now expand our efforts outside of the cafe. Not that we've got it totally dialed, but we've gone a long way. And how can we take those principles and start to apply them to our catering practices more effectively as well?
So one of the things I think I love about the work I get to do is that because I'm a consultant that works across all kinds of brands in all kinds of cities and all kinds of infrastructures and all kinds of environments, I get to see the common thread that really runs across everything. And when I started my career over 30 years ago, I started in the software industry, and I was fortunate enough to start my first job at a user design lab, which in the 90s was very cutting edge. And 30 plus years later, we are still trying to figure out how we have, on the one hand, this advanced technology and AI and all this, and then over here we have a very analog world. And a kitchen is still a very analog world. I go in asking for donation data, and people are rifling through their drawers for papers. I ask for donation data, I'm getting PDFs with 14 boxes. Okay. I see spoilage logs scribbled on clipboards outside of coolers. it is still a very analog world. And I think one of the things that we could do in our training and development of especially kitchen staff, but really all the people who touch and deal with the food, is just basic spreadsheet skills. I mean, just put a little bit of data in a spreadsheet and get curious about it. Then when you roll out all those technologies, they'll probably catch on more because people will be like, oh, I now know what can happen when I know the data. But the other thing that I think is a challenge in this, when it comes to food waste, is for a good reason we focus everything on weight, right? It's all about pounds, or if you're in another country, kilograms, or whatever, metric tons, or whatever you're using. And I don't have to convince all of you, because I'm hearing it in a lot of sessions, that there's problems with having everything be weight. How do you convert that to meals and nutrition and all this stuff? So the challenge with that, and of course I totally get why we have to aggregate all that information, is if I do a food waste audit, right? So food waste audits are generally like we look at everything, we scrape things into different bins, we weigh it all. And first of all, most places don't have the time, the scales, the equipment, the space, the labor to do any of that on any day. But if you do that, and then you have a meeting afterwards and you say, okay, we had a 200-person event and we had 8.7 pounds of creamer waste. What would you do with that information, right? Then, pardon me, I know this is going to be a little hard. If you email me, I can send you slides. But what if in that meeting I held this up, right? And then, what if I held that up, which is the before picture on the table? How easy is it to solve this problem, right? And so, unfortunately, because we're not contextualizing the information, people who are in charge of setting a table, the banquets team, right? This goes to what you were saying about the front of house piece. They're not connecting this dot, that this is an easy thing that they can do to reduce creamer waste, because they see it all the time, they know it, but they don't have the evidence to then make the decision and feel confident that what they've done is okay. And now I happen to know that was 8.74 pounds of creamer, but what if I didn't know the weight? What if all I got to see as a pastry chef was this? I should probably cut my cheesecake slices in half, right? Like, it just doesn't take that much. So sometimes we overthink it. We think that we need to solve the entire menu. And what I've been saying lately is solve one thing. Just solve your bread problem. Just solve your milk problem. And once you start doing that, you're going to create systems and processes and momentum and competitions and all the other things, and the other problems will fix themselves pretty quickly. But we over-engineer the data thing. We're just overshooting it, and we need to, I think, back up a little bit, simplify it, and then work our way up to it.
I love everything you guys have said so far, and it's nice to have just a diversity of experiences and business sizes. So I work for Cava Mediterranean Grill. We're a growth company. We serve delicious Mediterranean food. We have almost 300 restaurants, and we're very scrappy and fast-moving. And so some of you guys have robust measurement systems, and for many of you maybe in the room, maybe you don't have that yet. I did not have that. We do have some back-of-house technology where all employees, we call them team members at Cava, are meant to measure out waste, end-of-shift waste at the end of the night. But if you've been in fast casual or food service, you know that that type of activity at end of shift is very hard to get people to do, because there are a million other things going on. But it's still a great data source, and it's one that we relied on. We also were very resourceful. We said, hey, Refed, heard you have a EDF Climate Corps fellowship opportunity, and we brought in an MBA EDF Climate Corps fellow for 11 weeks, and he ran Cava's first food waste and climate baseline. And I would encourage anybody who's small and scrappy out there to do the same type of thing, because that type of the type of resourcing is out there. You don't have to be intimidated by all the consulting companies that charge tons of money to do your food and waste baseline. You can look it up how to do it on the internet. You can call your friends who work for the consulting companies and say, is this how you do it? And then you get some great data. Our food waste and climate fellow went to some of our restaurants, and he partnered with other general managers, and he said, hey, at lunch and at dinner, weigh out your waste. And we found out that most of our food waste is back of house. or it leaves the restaurants with guests. We found that most of our front of house waste is packaging. We found out what our top 5 wasted items are. We translated that weight into dollars. And we kept it simple. We visualized it. We presented it to our leadership. We said, it's not blah, 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 blah metric tons. We said, it's 48 African elephants worth of chicken every year. That's this much dollars going out the door. And, you know, I work for a company that's young, it's scrappy, it's progressive, it wants to do well, it wants its brand to be leading. And so in visualizing those things in those ways and taking data that we already had available to us, we were able to drive some momentum around asking for better waste measurement, asking for training days, food donation programs, which we did not have, and then asking to pilot some end-of-shift waste programs, because those were our hot spots. That is what we need to do to get better as a brand in order to stay competitive on things that our guests and team members care about.
Thank you guys so much. That's super interesting, the landscape of measurement. And I think when you're looking at the numbers, or when you're thinking about numbers, it can feel really dry or like the least sexy aspect of running a food waste initiative. But truly, these are things that translate directly to the food on our plates and the decisions we make every day. So it's perfect. Thank you so much. So I'd like to zoom in now on some challenges. There's many successes and many barriers to progress in this area. And this question zooms in a little bit on hospitality and events, which we have panelists that are directly engaged in. So what are some of the unique challenges and constraints that the hospitality and events industries face when it comes to food waste reduction? And I'm going to go to you, Maggie, first.
Yeah, I was talking about looking outside of our kitchens to catering, and let me tell you, I feel really confident when I'm talking about reducing waste in our kitchens and in our cafes and all of our strategies there. And while there is some crossover, you really have to kind of take a different mindset when it comes to catering. So when we were creating our towards zero waste catering guide, I was in the field with a ton of catering managers doing everything from like coffee events to like big dinners that folks were doing, and taking pictures and just kind of really in the weeds there. And there are so many things that for me in my role, I had never really thought about before. Some of the challenges when you're talking about catering, you know, maybe in your kitchen you guys have a strong composting program. All the guests know you have a composting program. They're great at separating their waste. It's very much ingrained. You take an event off-site and suddenly maybe there's no composting there. Maybe your food recovery partner can't pick up from that location. And you also often have people who have never interacted with you before who are coming and attending that event. I'm sure you see that at the stadium. That's the model, right? We see this all the time on our college campuses. Think new student orientation. You have families and students. They're coming from all over the country, all with different backgrounds and interactions in their own communities. So some ways that our teams have started to address this is really, really clear signage, but we also know people don't always read signs. You guys probably have seen that. So, you know, partnering with the sustainability office, for example, or even our own team members to be like at the site of disposal and saying, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here. And sometimes it really has to be that manual to start to see the change and make these things work.
I don't think we have enough time to talk about the challenges in our industry, but I would say there's probably like 3 primary ones. The first one is just mis or disinformation, probably misinformation for the most part. Logistics and time, I think, are the top 3. So misinformation is like if I'm coming to a new venue that I haven't talked to before, they'll be like, oh yeah, we can't do food waste donations because the city won't let us, or like whatever that narrative is that they were told once, that they've never then been given the opportunity to think outside the box or question what they were told, much less find a solution against it. So I would say that's definitely one. Logistics is definitely a real concern in an arena or a stadium, which is already pretty site constrained. everything has to go in and out of one loading dock and has to be transported to the loading dock from wherever it is in the very large building. So transporting different things, much less separating them at the source, like you said, is definitely a challenge. And orchestrating, I guess, an additional truck to come in and out of that loading dock in that certain space of time is definitely a challenge. Overcomeable, but definitely a challenge. We're building a zero waste plan for one of the oldest baseball stadiums in the country. I'm sure you could guess which one. And they have literally no additional space anywhere. And so we're thinking about how to actually take things slightly off-site to find ways to site separate it because nobody separates it the right way at the source. Mm-hmm. The last one is time, especially in arenas that flip between basketball and hockey or basketball and concerts or whatever it is. The operations teams are really focused on making that happen and making sure the building can open up safely to promote good fan experience. And so having to move one additional bin or separate one additional bag of waste, much less reduce it at its source, is definitely tough. I cheated. There's a fourth one, which is also finger pointing. I would say finger pointing is another big challenge. I work a lot with the operators of our stadiums and arenas who will point their finger at their hospitality team. Maybe it's Bon Appetit, maybe it's OVG Hospitality, maybe it's another hospitality company that's out there. But they're pointing their fingers at them, and then the hospitality team is saying, well, we were never asked to do that, so we didn't know that we should. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of that happening too.
Yeah. So I would say one of the biggest challenges is the unbelievable amount of variability. So a convention center could go from having one day they're doing a 25-person VIP lunch to the next night they're doing a 1,000-person plated gala to the next day they're doing a 20,000-person car show. I mean, it is all over the place. And when I start working with any of my events clients, one of the first things I ask them is, how much of your business is custom menus? It's a very high percentage. An untested menu is a wasteful menu, right? Because they're always trying something new to accommodate what the planner asks. So much of what happens in food waste in events is fear-based. Fear of running out of food, fear of getting yelled at by someone, fear of the planner, and so because everybody's been burned before. And so what I hear a lot of is, oh, well, we did this because the planner asked. I know the planner and I know you didn't ask, but they do that because it's just like the fail-safe, right? So one of the things that I hear a lot is I'll come in and I'll have like these slides of like pre-poured teas and lots of bread on the table and over-served salad dressings and everything. And almost inevitably, the executive chef will say, like, well, my people know better, or I know how much salad dressing was supposed to go into, per person, or we don't pre-pour tea here. And it's amazing. Inevitably, every time I'm in the building, I'm like, you don't pre-pour tea, do you? Let me just get a little picture of this plated dinner with 931 glasses of tea poured, right? And so then what happens is, oh, well, the planner asked. So the exception to the rule happens so often that there are really no rules. These rules that we have of like, well, we don't do it this way, or we don't do that way. When you've got a client that's that powerful involved, like you don't do that at a restaurant, right? You might alter a dish a little bit for a customer. But when a planner comes in and they want you to alter entire portions of your menu and you do that, now how is the rest of the team supposed to implement that efficiently when they've not seen this before? And also because you go from serving 25 people to 200 people to 2,000 people to 20,000 people, the smaller the group, the more wasteful. Because those tend to have menu specs that go like 1 to 50 or 1 to 100. So next time you're at a really small event, watch. It'll be enough food. If you're there with 20, 30 people, easily 100 people could eat the food that's put out because they haven't really broken down the menu specs into smaller components.
That's great. Thanks so much. We're going to move and talk about stakeholder engagement, since this is a whole category of challenge and opportunity, of course. So Jenny, would you start us off with stakeholder engagement?
This is a topic that I feel strongly about, and in a few ways. In fact, it's part of why I do the job that I do and the functions that I do it in. But I would say three things. Number one, I think Dana said this the first day. She said, food waste is a bipartisan issue, and that's gold. That's gold for this movement. And so I always encourage anyone that I'm talking to let's think about the intersectionality of these issues. It's a climate issue. It's a waste issue. It's a food waste issue. It's a food justice issue. It's a food insecurity issue. And different people care different amounts about those issues. So let's recognize that, embrace it, welcome everybody to the table. The second thing I would say, and I think this is one click deeper, and especially in the work that I do, working really half-half on the business supply chain side and the sustainability side, is don't discount your stakeholders' concerns. Every department can be myopic, right? It's about what the legal team thinks. It's about what the marketing team thinks, right? But be part of your team and understand that I view my job as to relate to their concerns and have them understand my challenges, and oftentimes there's an overlap. I don't have to tell my operations and finance team that COGS is an important issue. They know immediately, and we use COGS as a proxy for waste because the return on our assets, which is our food inventory, is COGS as a percent of sales. So when we reduce waste, we decrease COGS as a percent of sales, and everyone's doing better. I don't have to tell my marketing and comms teams that team members and customers and guests care about social impact and climate issues. I just have to help them draw the line between climate and food waste and help them understand how they can talk about it. The third thing I would say is that sustainability has to be in the room, and these issues have to be in the room where the decisions are made, where the stakeholders are. I feel very privileged to be in the role that I am at Kava, working both in sustainability and in supply chain. And I would say, how would I talk about it? I'm attuned to the rhythm of the business, right? I'm very busy, and it's stressful because I deal with supply chain crises. But I look at out-of-stock reports just as much as I look at food waste reports, and it means that I have an understanding of what the business cares about, and I can speak with credibility to my business partners about why we need to be doing things. And I have the incredible fortune of working with business partners and with a leadership structure that cares deeply about embedding ESG into the company's DNA.
That's all great stuff. So I know that we talk a lot about executive buy-in, and everything you said is absolutely true. In the work that I do, I would rather have a room full of servers and dishwashers and line cooks than I would GMs and vice presidents. Because at the end of the day, they have to understand and implement the changes. And with the work I did over the last year through World Wildlife Fund and the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment, and some of the places where we went into the training, we did focus groups after, which I do this training a lot, but I don't ever do like a focus group. How did it go? What did you think? So we did these focus groups, and I remember one of the directors of banquets, he said that the most eye-opening thing to him was he could see how the line level staff had responded to the training and were feeling a greater sense of belonging. And he said, normally when we roll new initiatives out, they think it's all about saving money and efficiency. And he said, I saw commitment rather than compliance. Now, how many of us want that in our workforce? Commitment rather than compliance. The hardest part of my job is to get the decision makers to bring the right people into the room when I do the training. That is the hardest part. There's so many excuses. I've heard them all. But the more people, and I always say, they're like, how many people should be in the room? Fill every chair. And I can't tell you the difference it makes when you do that. The one other stakeholder I really want to talk about in the work I do, again, it might be different in different slices of this industry, is that the executive chef is both the biggest problem and the best solution. Executive chefs are not always open to feedback and not always willing to see the waste. And so they shoot down feedback. Sometimes I've seen this happen, and they, have this, they're sort of like, I don't want you to know how the sausage is made, right? So they don't always expose like their recipes and their processes. And again, it's like, well, I know how many ounces of salad dressing go per person. I'm like, well, are you standing there with your line cooks when they're pouring it? I don't think so. Because what they're doing is just grabbing a vessel off a shelf and pouring it till it's full. Nobody's measuring out per person. But once the chef gets on board, once the chef sees, oh, I'm not here to tell you how to do your job, I'm not here to make you look bad, I'm here to empower all of you to fix this. And you know the solutions, you're a professional, you have great intuition. Once they feel that there's no risk that they're being made to look bad or anything, total game changer. Once they start sharing the photos and they're willing to have a collaborative conversation, it's a total game changer. The chef must be on board. He or she, and statistically it's a he, must be on board with this program. But that is not as easy as you might think. You really have to have a culture change and a different kind of breaking of a psychological barrier. And once you do that, magic will happen, but you do have to break that.
That's such a great response, and I think it's so true. So much of what waste work is all about, and so many things, like anything you really want to stick in the kitchen, is about changing the culture, right? And, yes. I think we've done a great job of that, and actually what I'm often thinking about is, especially when it comes to catering, how do we get the folks that are asking for catering on board with the idea of a zero waste event? I think it's easy as a consumer to make a lot of assumptions about what companies are or are not doing. So at Bon Appetit, it's really important for us to tell the story of what we're doing and why we're doing it, and bring our customers who are eating the food in the cafes and at the catering events into that story, and also give them an easy way in to be part of it as well. And what I mean by that is, with any sort of waste, there's a bit of a taboo, isn't there? Like, you're like, oh, I'm just gonna throw this away and hopefully no one notices, right? But I think, rather than shaming them or saying, oh, you should put less food on your plate, how can we kind of invite them in and make it really easy for them to ask for a smaller portion, for them to ask for a reusable to-go container, to say, yes, I would like a towards zero waste catering event, and know that you guys are focused on the details so that they don't have to be. So it's really my job to kind of stay ahead of the game and make sure all of those options are out there. We're letting folks know about them, we're telling the story behind them, and inviting them to join us in the process.
You just reminded me of a stakeholder that didn't come to mind for me right away, which is the people that are in our premium spaces. So they expect that the plates are full of brownies or whatever it is throughout the entire event, whether they're going to eat them or not. And the staff is trained to keep that plate full as opposed to letting it dwindle down. Same thing with portion sizes throughout our facilities. But then the spaces aren't designed to accommodate even a change in policy or a zero waste policy. Like in our premium spaces, there is one space for a bin designed into the wall. That's from the architect design team. We can't have the optics of it. How dare we have another bin sticking out that like is not with the same design aesthetic, especially in the premium spaces. So it's like so core in thinking how we redesign the spaces to set ourselves up for success. The other stakeholder that I think is really important to highlight from the sports and entertainment side are corporate partners. So, historically in the sports marketing world, corporate partners just stuck their logo on the wall, paid a lot of money to sponsor whatever it was within the building. But now we're seeing more kind of impact-driven corporate partnerships, and we're starting to see more and more around waste reduction. There's a number of like aluminum-related corporate recycling partners that pay good money to do activations in NBA facilities, NFL facilities. I would love to see more around food waste from Hellmann's and other companies that we know have product in the space, could do really interesting food waste reduction activations, which activations are really the best way to have passive sports marketing and engage and educate fans. Even though operators would say they're not there to be educated, you can still show them a more interesting way to do something, or take away the option to take away a less sustainable option.
Can I add something real quick that both of them just said just triggered a real revelation that's also happened in recent clients I've worked with that are luxury brands, right? Mm-hmm. So in the cheesecake example, that's a luxury brand. And when we were talking about that, someone in the room said, well, but then how am I supposed to make that cheesecake look like it's worth $59? And I was like, there are other ways because, listen, I want us all to say this together in events. Volume does not equal value. That's the way events have been built and hospitality has been built, that volume equals value. Really? We can't get more creative than volume to create experience and value? Like that, there's just no creativity or innovation in that. Volume does not equal value. Take that one thing away, please. Volume does not equal value.
That is spectacular. I completely agree. And folks, I've heard throughout the time, luxury offerings have to be abundant. And in fact, if you ask folks what they're looking for in a luxury offering, normally the top 10 words they'd say don't include abundance. It has to do with experience and ingredients and all of these pieces that all of us could think of in a great experience. You guys might have heard while Maggie was speaking some bussing going on next door. I requested this room just for the visceral soundtrack of hearing our lunch bus. I wanted to encourage everyone on the app, the event app, there's a way to submit questions for a Q&A. And folks, I'm going to skip to our magic wand question just because I loved your responses. We have so much to talk about, but about 15 minutes before we wrap, I'm going to cut for audience questions, both in the room and on the app, but I wanted to say if you'd like to submit that way, please feel welcome to. I'm going to be looking at them. I'm not texting, I promise. So folks, if you could wave a magic wand and there were no constraints, we're talking no issues with budget, resourcing, logistics, all the things we could list challenges for all day, what would be the food waste solution that you would design for the hospitality industry and why? And Maggie, I'm going to go to you first.
Oh, lovely. So full transparency, I had such a hard time with this question because I felt like I kept thinking of things and then like a barrier would pop into my mind. Like, oh, that's not possible. But yesterday I was on a run. I'm a runner, and I'm not big into tracking my runs, but I just was gifted an old Garmin watch from a friend of mine. So I was like, I'm going to use it. And it was kind of cool to see, my steps and my progress and the miles I had logged so far. And I was like, I'm just thinking about food waste. And I think right now I've been talking about catering, but another big focus area for me is post-consumer waste and plate waste. And I was like, wouldn't it be, and then, with that, there's a lot of shame around plate waste. And how can we change behavior in a way that we're not shaming people into it, that it's really like inclusive? And I'm looking at my watch and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if you did have food left on your plate or you threw something away, you got your own personal like impact metrics? Like you got a little update. I mean, this is really pie in the sky, guys, but there's a lot of food waste innovators here. So like maybe someone can do this, but like, oh, you've just, this is what you threw away, here's your carbon footprint, your water footprint, and the same thing when you're doing better, right? So it's like, oh, you've like improved a little bit. I think it'd be really cool, and it would show your personal change, so it's easy, we've talked about pointing fingers, it's easy when you're looking at comprehensive data to be like, oh, that wasn't me. But you can't escape it if it's your own data.
Everybody's looking at me, so I guess it's my turn. I would say, it's actually really what we talked about a lot, that, in our premium spaces, I think in our just fan experience journey in general, it just comes with the baggage of waste, and it has to feel luxurious and therefore wasteful. So I think just vision is that we can kind of rethink what luxury and premium really means in our spaces, and that it's actually much more about practicality, and the luxury comes in the actual experience itself, in this quality of the service, quality of the ingredients, and we actually rethink, actually locally sourced, or supporting local businesses, whatever that angle is actually more luxurious feeling than the alternative. But I would also say, on the other side, knowing that our spaces are really large and have a very large physical footprint and everything associated with it. I would just love our facilities to be better partners for the community. So I don't know what exactly that looks like yet, except that we don't do it as well as we should, especially in times of crisis. And as we know, times of crisis are worsening and becoming more common. And so our facilities should be that support system because everyone knows where they are. They have the space, they have the finances. We should be that community partner. So I'd love to see that more in the future, and we're going to need it more in the future.
That's great. So I would say, you all know the food production hierarchy. And what I encounter a lot of times is that, of course, everyone's focused at the bottom of that, right? And it's like, we compost, yay, us, right? Like we're done. And like one of my favorite quotes, actually, from one of those sites that we worked with last year, they have a digester. And so every time I would ask about waste, well, we don't have food waste here. And I finally realized that what they meant was, we have a digester. And after the training and all the work they did, one of them said, the biggest takeaway from me was realizing that the digester wasn't the we don't have waste answer. It was there to catch everything else we didn't catch all the way through. So I think my magic wand thing would be for people to not get so complacent once they've checked the box on composting and checked the box on recovery, that they have to then land in the most difficult space, which is prevention. Right, the source reduction, which is also the most exciting space, right? So I really wish that they would focus less on treatment and more on prevention.
My answer was very whimsical to your question. It's time for some whimsy. No, I said time. If I could wave a magic wand, I would give everybody more time because, let's sort of get philosophical for a second and move away from the data and the tactics and talk about the paradigm shift, the cultural shift that's going to need to take place, right? What does it take to slow down, to enjoy our food, to prepare it thoughtfully, to respect and consider the purveyors and where it comes from and where it's going? And yes, maybe to consume less, right? Making these changes will be cultural, like you said. You're transformational. You're a change maker, and so don't discount the value of being a champion for engagement and for taking time to sit down with your business partners, be with them as a community, and to share a new way of thinking and being. I don't know, I myself think, like, is it more about impact? Like, what can I teach my daughter and my son to do? Mm-hmm. Or is it more about scale? Let me work for the biggest company and move the needle like half a degree. It takes everything, right? But I think predominantly, if we can focus on what is the paradigm shift that I can make, that I can live, that I can share with the person right next to me, to move that culture towards. At Kava, we like to call our guests, we say, for those who savor, right? We call it the Mediterranean way. We say, come to our table and sit and stay with us. This fast casual in a take, make, waste type of world, right? But it's part of the paradigm shift, right? We don't want to be every fast casual, right? We want to be a fast casual where you walk in and you get a big old bowl of food, and we don't say, like, don't waste your food and order the chicken because it's less climate intensive. We want you to come in, you get a nice warm meal, you feel healthy, you don't feel too full, you've ordered a whole bunch of stuff and it feels generous, and you walk out with a bowl that's 75% plants, and we didn't even say climate change or food waste. Right? And I work on bowl quality because I'm also in supply chain, and I want to work on bowls that you can take home and you can put in your fridge and you can microwave, or that you can share with your friends. One of the things that a lot of people at Kava do, they get these big bowls, and some people like me will take them home and they like peck on them for hours at a time. And we encourage that. We think it's funny. We play with it on social media. It's if I could wave a magic wand, it's how do we re-educate? How do we market living in a different way? That is just as important as the brilliant tactics too that you guys have mentioned.
I think that was absolutely so fantastic. Could we have a round of applause right before we go to questions? I am so inspired by these folks, and get your questions ready. We're going to bring a mic around, but something that just struck me was this concept of scaling up, out, and deep. So making our actions much bigger, bringing folks along with us, but also taking the time and the attention to go deep on the work that we're doing with the communities doing it, with the teams doing it, and seeing what this means for those operations, because that's really where the value comes. When we think about saving food, we're thinking about our food, right? Our meals, the meals we serve our families. You know, it's not an amorphous piece far away, or we're not saving a planet, we're saving our homes, each of us individually. So I find that really inspirational. So thank you each for that. Could I see hands for some questions for our panel? Okay, right here in the back. Thanks, Angel.
Sorry, who is? Hello, my name is Rana. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and I've been a restaurant owner, chef, and caterer for about 25 years. And 3 years ago, I accidentally started a nonprofit network of chefs. I didn't mean to, but it happened at the beginning of the pandemic. And we are a team of chefs who cook for the houseless community in Louisville every day. And we do that with food that we rescue from multiple partners around the community. So having been a caterer, and I loved everything that you said, and I think it's exciting to see larger companies like yours doing work around educating your teams and setting standards, so it's amazing. And it's very much needed. I think there are a lot of challenges. I mean, when you talk about volume not equaling value, I 100% agree. However, as a caterer, I can tell you that your worst fear ever is that you will run out of food. And also, you're also working with a lot of clients who, from a cultural standpoint, abundance means love, and abundance means hospitality. So all these challenges that we have, but I do have a question in here. So, you know, I think one of the things that we're considering doing, kind of working on, is creating some kind of designation for our restaurant partners, where it's something they can stick on the, you know, on the window, an MOU, a set of guidelines, something that says that they've kind of gone through a process and that they're committed to food waste across the board of prevention and recovery with us. What I wonder is if anybody's aware of anything nationally that exists, because I think this is what's going to have to happen. You're going to influence companies, small and large, across the country, restaurant operations. You're going to have something that creates this sort of sexiness to this. Like there has to be an incentive to it. Is there anything like that that exists already? Does anybody know of anybody? And then there's all these innovators here, as you said. So can we create something like that? Maybe Refed could do that.
I think it only applies to part of what you were asking for, but I don't know if you're familiar. If you're talking about restaurant partners that are doing recovery, are you familiar with the Food Recovery Verified certification from the Food Recovery Network? They're a wonderful nonprofit based in DC. We actually 80% of Bon Appetit accounts are Food Recovery Verified, and they do kind of the back end work to make sure that a team is recovering on a regular basis. So the application goes to them. It's a yearly application, so they check back in every year, and you'll get like a sticker on the window that says Food Recovery Verified, and it's a great way for restaurants to start sharing that message, I think.
And then there's, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Benjamin, you probably know him from Thailand, who's got like that big, he started it in Asia, and it's a big like food waste pledge, and now a lot of U.S. consultants have started signing on to his, like I think you like take a training and become like a certified consultant with him, and then there's this whole pledge thing. I've not had a lot of super familiarity with it, but I see it all over LinkedIn all the time, and I've been following him for years, and I've seen this thing grow and grow and grow. So you might check out, like I think if you just Googled food waste pledge or something like that, you'd probably see a few things that come up. So I think that there are probably things out there. I know a lot of the larger companies will develop their own internal programs, right? Their own internal certifications. There are cities out there that have developed their own internal programs. So there's certainly nothing wrong with developing your own program if you have the right kind of momentum in the community to really make that happen and get it off the ground. I would personally suggest doing an assessment of comparing that to other initiatives that you might pour your energy and time and money into, and get some feedback from stakeholders to see which might truly move the needle. Because I personally am not convinced that a sticker on a window is going to motivate a lot of the people that we need to motivate. And I'm not saying, that's just my personal opinion, which is worth the, time it took me to say it. That's like it. So do the research. That's the key takeaway, is just make sure that you're looking at all the options of how you want to spend your passion and time and stakeholder energy and all that.
Thank you. My name's Haley. I'm with Food Rescue US. I have so many questions, but I'll try to hammer it down to one. So you all, it sounds like, are on a national scale, but you have locations in various places. If the folks in this room are interested in getting involved with some of these locations across the US, who are the decision makers that you suggest we reach out to at the local level? With that said, I plan on giving all 4 of you my card, so please anticipate that too.
I would say for ours, there's not one central person. I often find that whoever is the most passionate, just kind of, the squeaky wheel, right? So they end up being the sustainability person in a lot of our facilities that don't have a full-time person focused on it. For these efforts, I would say, or at least in sports and arenas, looking to the hospitality partner and working with them is really important, because they are probably the decision makers. A lot of times the executive chef or someone on the ground there can actually help just do like a local activation. But the only way it gets talked about is if you also talk and bring the story to the team or the venue to help amplify it. Because I often find times that our operators of our venues don't even know what the hospitality team is doing, much less can talk about it. So making that connection, I think, is really important. But I'll take your card for sure.
No, that's true, because a lot of times the people who are passionate and who are really like rolling up their sleeves and doing the work, they're super humble. And even like I talk to a lot of the sales and services teams, and they're like, we wish we knew what was going on within our own team in the building, because usually the people who are doing that like boots on the ground work are so humble. They're out there serving food to the community and no one even knows that they're doing that. And so that's also like kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like they're doing all this great stuff and they're not usually wanting to stand in the spotlight, but we also need them to be like the champion of those ideas.
For Bon Appetit, you can reach out to me. My role would just be more if I have food service operators in different areas, they come to me if they're looking for a new food recovery partner, and I try to keep like a pulse on all the different people who are working on that. So I will connect you with anyone who might need your services.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How many of you in this room are with like some sort of local food recovery organization? Okay. What I would encourage you to do is when you start to work with a partner, ask them to please set up a tour and bring a member of every department in the building to the facility and walk around, meet the people you serve, see your kitchen space, see the neighborhood you operate in. I got to do that with a group in Portland from the convention center. They'd been donating to this one place forever. And I was asking them, like, tell me about your donation program. And like, oh, well, sometimes they can only take, sometimes they don't take everything. They kind of pick and choose and blah, 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 but we love them. So we all went and did a tour. There was like 9 of us. And it was extremely moving. And it was a total game changer, because then all those people went back and shared with their coworkers. And it was also very illuminating, because I asked the executive director, I was like, so the chef tells me you can't always take all the food. Like, explain. And so he was explaining, well, we feed 60 people who live on the streets every day, and most of them are addicted, have substance abuse, issues. So we can't serve anything that requires a knife. We can't serve anything that has bones, seeds, nuts, because they don't have teeth. Mm-hmm. We can't serve different foods to different people because fights break out. I mean, I was like, I never thought about those things, right? So you have a wealth of knowledge of your community and the needs, the nutritional needs, all these other needs of your people. Engage on that level, and that's going to be really powerful.
And if you're asking for a tour of a sports or entertainment facility, ask for a tour and then tell them you'll give them a free gap assessment afterwards. They have to feel like they're getting something for them to take their time to listen to you. But if you just give them a string of recommendations that come from it, even if it seems pretty obvious to you, you're way more likely to gain their trust than just to ask for a tour.
Oh, I was going to add, if whoever you're talking to says we don't have time for a tour, which you might hear a lot from food service providers, I do always encourage our teams to invite the food recovery partner on site. So I think even you going there, our teams have daily meetings that you could pop into for 10 minutes and just tell a little bit more about your organization. I think it, like, as to your point, it's really, really impactful for all of the employees, especially the hourly employees who are usually packing up the food, to hear that message, even more so than anyone above them.
I'll just add really quickly, I'd be happy to connect with you or anybody else in the room. Cava is opening a lot of locations rapidly, so we are on track to open 500 restaurants, so 200 new locations by 2025. We go from Boston down to Florida and then across the U.S. to Southern California. And I say that to say, I would love to see where there's overlap with where you are in your cities. When we open a new restaurant, we have 3 training days. We just piloted this past week our first training days food donation program. So located a new food donation partner and would love to work with you guys. We throw out over 1,000 bowls and pitas with every 3-day training set, and so we have a goal to reduce that amount. So there's a lunch training session and a dinner training session. We need you to come in and pick up twice over the course of those 3 training days, and then the 4th day we have community day, where we open up the restaurant doors. We welcome in community members. They get a free bowl of food. It helps our employees train with sort of real-life customers, and instead of ringing up a charge, the point of sale system, we actually ring up a donation to that local food bank partner. So I would absolutely love to partner with any of you guys who are in those locations who want that type of food. I'll tell you about our allergens, and I would love, more importantly, to hear about the work that you're doing.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much. So we have 3 minutes left, and I'd love to hear your final words. One message for these folks to take away.
Y'all go one thing at a time. Solve one problem at a time. Just solve. If it's just bread, solve the bread problem. If it's just the cheese problem, solve the cheese problem. Just solve one problem at a time. People can't take on more than that right now, honestly. It's a tough world. Just solve one problem at a time.
I think mine is related to that. And we were just talking about food recovery, but I'll keep talking about food recovery. We know that we're always going to have overproduction, to your point, however many bowls of pita. So I think that's a great place to start. You already know there's waste in your kitchens. Connecting with a local partner is the best way to tackle that. There's a really simple solution there, and I think that's a really great place to start in your waste journey. And then you can always continue on from there and do a lot more.
You're good at the mic drop, so I'll let you close it. I would say just find as many like win-win-wins or multiple wins at once. Try to just make as many people happy at once with a singular solution, especially in sports. Again, we have like a stakeholder of a corporate brand or partner, and as well as an athlete or an entertainer or a visitor, the employees. There's so many different stakeholders, so if you can make as many people happy at once, make them all look good, chances are they're going to be willing to do something.
I love that. I don't know how much of a mic drop this is, but my closing remark was just to thank everybody here in the room for being here and being part of not the movement, but the wave of change. If you remember Dana's words, this is more than a movement. This is the paradigm shift. And in addition to solving one small problem at a time, right? I would say, don't forget it takes millions of people making that incremental change, and not one person screaming in the corner. We might consider ourselves the champions, but don't forget that the majority of people are people who want to do more. I mean, this is like classic consumer insights, right? You have the not concerned, you have the champions. The champions are oftentimes the target, but they're not the needle movers. It's the wants to do more and the what's in it for me, right? Wants to do more is like create a frictionless experience, create an educational experience, create an experience where they can take credit, right? Like they want to be able to pat themselves on the back. They want to be able to put something on their Instagram and get that feedback loop that I did the right thing, right? And those are the people who are imperfect. That's me. We're all imperfect, right? Not everybody recycles or composts everything all the time, right? Not everybody goes and volunteers for their congressperson. But how many millions of people put that voting sticker, right, on their shirt, and they take the Instagram photo? So think about how you can create that feedback loop for those people. Think about for the people who are what's in it for me. Think about how to make it about climate, how to make it about social impact, how to make it about how to make it about being accretive to the brand, how to make it about saving money. Sustainability and food waste is not just for the elite and for the rich. It's for everyone. So don't forget that, it's all of us. It's everyone. It's everyone you meet. It's everyone you touch. It's everyone that sees you putting something in the composting. I'm so happy to be part of this group and to be part of this conference. So thank you so much.